Hello students. Today we're going to discuss on the lesson The Blue Bead, which is written by Nora Burke. Before we begin the lesson for today, please keep your textbook ready because I would be referring to some of the important points, pointing out some of the paragraphs that would be important for you to understand. However, having said that, I would genuinely request you to read the text, so that you would be able to understand the text properly. All right. So the story, The Blue Bead by Nora Burke. This is a picture of who Nora is, a beautiful lady. And this is a short biography on Nora Burke. Now you have a short biography even in your textbook itself, page number 92. All right. But this is just in a brief that has been given to you on a screen. Now, Nora Burke happens to be a British novelist and a travel writer. She's famous for her descriptions of life in India during the early 20th century because of her own experience, where she had stayed with her father, who was a forest officer in India. And in her early childhood days, she had spent most of her time, traveling through the Indian forests, especially on elephant back. So that is why she was inspired to write some stories based on India, all right, with the background of India. So this is a short, brief biography of Nora Burke. The rest of it, you can find it in your text. Moving on ahead with the characters of the story, which is very important. The first character, we have the protagonist, Sepia, then the antagonist, Crocodile. The third is Sebia's mother, and the fourth is the Gujar woman. Gujar refers to the community. All right, so no name has been mentioned, but only the Gujar woman. The theme of the poem talks about wish fulfillment, poverty, and bravery. Now, these are some of the key points that has to be noted. What is this story about? First of all, you have the description of the crocodile, about its origin, food habits. That is in the beginning of the story, where the crocodile has been described. Then secondly, description of Sibia, then of the bazaar that she often visits with her parents, with her family members and siblings. And then her daily chores, her work that she does. She joins with her mother and her friends to collect paper grass. Then the fifth point talks about the Gujar women, their encampment. Where do they stay? How do they live? And the sixth point talks about how actually Sibia was left behind, all right, because she intended to hidingly go and visit the cavelets where she had, uh, where she used to make clay pots, all right. That was one of her interests that she would do. Then the seventh point talks about she, Sibia, seeing a Gujar woman being attacked by a crocodile, and how at the end she finds the crocodile, rescues the woman, safely drops her to the Gujar encampment. So basically, this follows the sequence of the story. Okay. And in the ninth and the 10th point, as you can see here, she returns to take her hay fork, and that is when she finds the blue bead. And then she shows her treasure to her mother. Now, when we talk about the blue bead out here, now this is the first thing that has to be clarified, that the story is about the blue bead. Now, why the blue bead is because the title, in the title that Nora Burke had mentioned, the story centers on the blue bead itself. Okay, in spite of the poverty, in spite of the bravery that she shows in the story, it centers around the blue bead. And why? It's because Sibia, the protagonist, She wants badly a blue bead to make a necklace for herself. All right. Now, it is very much clear to us that she lives in a very extreme poverty. Okay, she cuts paper grasses, she dries the cow dung, she helps her mother from the time she could even toddle. All right. One day, when she goes alone, when she was left behind, intentionally she stays back, and then she sees a Gujar woman being attacked by a crocodile. And what she does, without even a second thought, she jumps to save the Gujar woman by aiming her hay fork on the crocodile's eyes. All right. So we would come to that point. What are the vulnerabilities of the crocodile? Okay. And she drags the woman out of water and then leaves her to her encampment. She drops her to her encampment. And that is where, when she comes back to fetch her, to take her bundle of paper grasses that she had cut and her sickle, that is where she finds the blue bead in the water. So at the end of the story, she's overjoyed when she finds the blue bead, because she has been intending, that is one of her wish, to have a blue bead necklace, a very innocent wish of a young girl, right? So when she returns on her way to home, she meets her mother, who chides her, scolds her for being lost. And then, instead of narrating to her what she had done as an act of bravery of saving this Gujar woman, she instead narrates to her, exclaims to her, in fact, that she found a blue bead, all right, for her necklace. Okay. So this is where we find the author, who presents to us two things. First of all, the lives of the people living in Indian villages, the kind of dangers that they have to face every day, which is part of their life already, and how poor people like Sibia, finding a small uh, substance, a blue bead, is more significant even than saving someone's life, as the only aspiration that Sibia had in her life, because she always wanted to have a necklace of blue bead. So this is where the plot of the story centers on the blue bead in the water beside the huge hungry crocodile, and Sibia's finding of the blue bead. In this way, the title becomes justified and apt. Okay, so let's move ahead with the text. Now we will be reading the textual portions. So please open your textbook to page number 93. And in the first paragraph itself, it talks about the crocodile. The description of the crocodile has been given, who is very ferocious. All right. Now I won't be reading out line to line, but this is the kind of environment, the kind of surrounding that where in which the crocodile stays, and how at times it easily escapes, or it easily is ignored by people because of the the features, because the crocodile lies along with those boulders, those rocks. So people who come to the forest to fetch water or paper grass, they don't actually notice them so much because they lie still. All right. And so, and to save themselves, as crocodile do not like loud noises, they're scared of loud noises, they would often, talk loudly and cross those rivers, where in those rivers crocodiles would be lying silently, camouflaging among those boulders. All right. So in the last paragraph of page number 93, you would find, as I read out, around him broad sparkling water traveled between cliffs and grass and forested hills. A jungle track came out of scrub each side and down to the sun-whitened stepping stones, on which a little fly-catcher was flirting with trilling along. So this is a kind of scenario that we find in Indian forest. Okay, the mugger, that is a crocodile, blackish brown above, and yellowy white underlay motionless, able to wait forever till food came. So the crocodile would always lie silently for a long time, waiting for its prey. This antediluvian saurian, an old-fashioned kind of reptile, this prehistoric juggernaut, which is unstoppable, ferocious, and formidable, means very strong, a vast force in the water, propelled by the unimaginable and irresistible power of the huge tail, lay lapped by ripples, a throb in his heart, a throb in his throat, his mouth running almost the whole length of his head was closed and fixed in that evil bony smile, and where the yellow underside came up to it, it was tinged with green. So he is described as this, who is ferocious, who is unstoppable, who is very strong, and one of the vast, a strong force in the water. And he is also described as the size, he was the size of a double tall man. He was twice the length of a tall man, all right? Double the size of a tall man. And inside him, among the stones which he had swallowed to aid digestion, rolled a silver bracelet. So, this is the description of the crocodile that is found in the Indian forest. All right, as the story is set up. Okay, so in page number 94, it talks about how it came to survive in the water from the praise of the bigger fishes, and how it learned to survive, and how it mostly fed on what things. Like in the third paragraph, it states it mostly fed on fish, on deer, monkeys, ducks, sometimes pie dog full of parasites, skeleton cow, and sometimes on the burning ghats, it would fed on half-burned bodies of Indian cast into the stream. All right. And in subsequent lines, that is where the first mention of the blue bead is present. Okay, in page number 94, beside him in the shoals as he lay waiting, glimmered a blue gem. Now it is clearly written here, it was not a gem, though it was a sand-worn glass that had been rolling about in the river for a long time. So by chance it was perforated. So by chance it just happened to have a hole in the middle, right through the neck of a bottle, perhaps. Okay, a blue bead. So it looked exactly like a blue bead. It had been rolling for a long, long time, and by chance there was a piercing in the middle. So it exactly looked like a blue bead. Now in page number 95, as we move with the sequence of the story, the description of the protagonist, CBI, is given. All right. Now, as you read through this page, you would find the kind of life that she lived, in the village that she lived, in what condition she lives, in a mud house, which is the same color as the ground. And she's a little girl, very thin, starveling, means starving because of the lack of food. Child dressed in an earth-colored rag. She had torn the rag in two to make skirt and sari. All right, just like how the older woman wears, she would cut the rag and she would wear it like a skirt and a sari. And it is said that she would eat the last of her meal chapati wrapped around a smear of green chili and rancid butter. It would smell like a rotten, it would give a very foul smell, rotten smell. She would divide those chapatis to make it look like more, all right, and sometimes showing straight white teeth. Out of, she would be happy with that, however, in the kind of life that she would live. Then it is described about her feature. She had an ebony hair, that means black or dark hair with great eyes. Her skin was oily, kind of like a brown cream, but she was a happy, immature child woman. That has been given specifically, that she was a child, She was a child, a 12-year-old girl, but she was a woman already because she learned, she knew how to work and help her mom. About 12 years old, barefoot, of course, and often goozy cold on a winter morning and born to toil. Sometimes her feet would be very cold, extremely cold. She it would not be easy to bear, but even then, as she was born to toil, so she would bear it. So this is a description of the protagonist Sibia out here. The next picture talks about her experience at the bazaar in the same page, page number 95, where she would take a delight to go to those bazaars with her siblings and her family members and observe what she would see. All right. And even as she observes, she never regrets of the kind of life that she lived. But in fact, she would take delight in observing them. Like, for instance, here in page number 95, the second last paragraph says that she knew what finery was. She knew what fine things are. She had been with her parents and brothers all through the jungle to the little town at the railhead where there was this bazaar. Okay, she would walk through all those uh, people, right? There would be many people who would be gathered there. There would be dogs, monkeys full of fleas, eating, gossiping, bargaining, humanity spitting Beetlejuice, hearing the bell of a sacred bull clonking as he lumped along through the dust and hubbub. And then at times she would take a pause, looked amazed at the sweet meal stalls, all right, at the brilliant honey confectionaries, abuzz with dust and flies. And she would actually get the smell of those confectionaries of the sweets above the smells of drains, all right, combining with all the kind of smells that she gets, she would cherish those. At home, of course, she never get all those, but at home she would sometimes taste wild honey or crunch the syrup out of a stalk of sugarcane. But these sweets were green and magenta. The sweets that she would see in the shops, in the bazaar, were green and magenta. So she would take delight in seeing those sweets which were colorful. All right. So in page number 96, as it is continued, it talks about the kind of cloth material that she sees people selling them and how it comes from different place, from Birmingham, then how people sit there and the shopkeepers and so on. So this you would have to read by yourself. Now in the middle of the paragraph, we learn about Sibia, how she starts to learn to toil from her, as it is given, from birth to death. It was marked for work, all right, as if she's destined to toil for the rest of her life. But Sibia, in all her life from birth to death, was marked for work. Since she could toddle, ever since she could start walking, learning to walk, she had husked corn, gathered sticks, put dung to dry, cooked and weeded and carried and fetched water and cut grass for fodder. So this is the kind of life she lived. She lived, and this is quite unfortunate for her. But even then, she regretted in it. She learned it. She toiled. She worked hard. All right, because that was the kind of life that she would be living. And in fact, for some of us, we have never done those things, but instead we have a lot of complaints, we regret, we have a lot of disappointments. But this Sibia, as you find here, she doesn't seem to complain at all right. So this is a picture of how she dries the corn, how she does the work. I don't have all the pictures, of course, but this is one of the pictures as an example that I wanted to show, that as a young girl, what she does, which is not supposed to be done. She's supposed to be playing around with friends and having fun, but this is what she does. All right. Now, in page number 96, here we find Sibia helping her mother in her daily chores, cutting the paper grass, all right, which they actually cuts them from the forest, takes them to the owner, and from where it is dispatched to the paper mills. The women often toiled all day at this work. They would work all day, all right? And what would the agent do? He would just sit on silk cushions smoking a hookah, all right? But however, in the last paragraph, it is stated that even after watching and observing them sitting relaxingly and they themselves working so hard, it never troubled her because such thoughts did not trouble her at all because she was so innocent. She just takes delight in every work that she does. However, as she skipped along with her sickle and homemade fork beside her mother, you could skip on the way out, but not on the way back when you ached with tiredness and there was a great load to carry. So, however, it would be a little difficult. They would be toiling for a whole day, but even then, she would never complain. Okay, so this was the kind of life that Sibia lived. Now, in this picture, in one of the instances of the story, here we find that the woman had returned home chattering, all right? Chattering because if they don't chatter, they would be tired. So in order to be energetic all the time, they would always chatter, have jokes, you know, or talk about anything as they move, as they go to the forest, and as they come back as well, all right? So that they could keep their spirit alive. Okay. So in page number 97, in the first paragraph, the story tells us that some of the women were wearing necklaces made out of lal bidges, made out of lal red seed. Some are shiny color seeds, black one end, that grew everywhere in the jungle. So it was a kind of trend that women would like to wear, you know, necklaces made out of seed. And each year they would make new necklaces instead of wearing the faded ones. And Sibia also wanted one, and that was a necklace of a blue bead. And so she would wish to have that. But in fact, it is written in the story that even, she could not afford to buy a needle. She had to wait for their families to buy a needle because they could not afford to buy a needle. The needle had broken. So, however, she had to wait. Never mind. She waits for it patiently, all right? And here in page number 97, the story describes about the Gujar encampment. All right, on their way to the Indian forest as they go and cut the paper grass, there is an encampment, a small group of community called Gujars who has been inhabiting there for quite a long time. Now in 97, page number 97, it is stated in the last paragraph that these Gujars were junglis. Okay, now it does not mean that CBRs and all that they were modern comparing to them. However, here it is stated that the Gujars were junglis, all right? Why? Because for countless centuries, their forebears, means their ancestors, had lived like this. They have been living a nomadic kind of life from place to place, getting their lives from animals, from grass and trees as they scratch their food together and store their substance in large herds and silvery jewelry. They were men in the wandering pastoral age, not stone age, of course, not hunters and not yet cultivators. So they would just move from one place to the other, all right? So their habitation was not permanent. So that is why they are called, they are looked at as junglis, all right? The Gujars. So in this picture out here, you would find that these are some of the clay pots that Sibia had made, all right, in some of the cavelets, in those cavelets, all right. So in the story, it happens that the mother and her friends, they go to cut the paper grass, and Sibia herself accompanies them. And while returning, she skips, all right, without informing her mother. She skips, and then she goes to the way where she had actually preserve those clay pots that she had made and visit those cavelets where she had stored them up, all right, molded of clay, while as it get hardened, right, waiting for it to get hardened. So she had made it, so she was waiting when will it get hardened, when she would had the opportunity to go and visit. So this was one of the instances where she had the opportunity, so she skips, she she is left behind, all right, intentionally she stays back, all right, without informing her mother. Now here in page number 100, you would find that in this picture the Gujar woman is seen to be carrying garas. Garas means a container, a vessel to fetch water, all right. Now on this was on the way back, on the way when Sibia was actually returning home all alone by herself, right? She noticed that a Gujar woman was, trying to fetch water from the river, all right? That is given in page number 100, okay? But something happens, a very strange thing happens here. That is, she, as she was taking the water, fetching the water, what happens? There was a crocodile, all right? And it was just not in a very long distance, but just within a yard, which she did not notice. A crocodile rises, a great reptile, okay, from the river and attacks the Gujar woman, because that is always a time when the crocodile waits for its prey, right? And here we find in this picture that the crocodile attacks her from within a yard, all right? So the woman is seen to be screaming in the fourth paragraph. She drops both her brass pots with a clatter on the boulder, from whence they bounced to the water, and Sylvia saw them bob away in the current. Oh, the two good vessels gone. All right. She tries to recoil from the crocodile, but the jaws of the crocodile was so strong at the same moment that she could hardly get rid of it. She slips and falls on one of the big breaking stone and clutched one of the timber log to save herself, but it was not enough. Okay, and even here you find that she is struggling so hard in pain, and this crocodile has been able to grasp her leg so tight to be able to draw her to the deep water so that he could feed on her, right? What happens next is a very interesting part. That is when we find the important theme of the story, that is the bravery of Sibia. She sprangs, okay, in page number 100, as it is given. And what is seen is that she jumps from boulder to boulder like a rock goat, like a rock goat. Sometimes it had some difficult. It is said it had been difficult to cross the stones, but today it was something different, right? Perhaps it must have been her adrenaline that drove her to jump like a rock goat. But now she came on wings, choosing her footing in midair without even thinking about it. And in one moment she was beside the shrieking woman. She was like a super woman, all right, at that time. Okay. So she jumps like a rock goat, and within a moment, what happens? She stabs with her hay fork on the crocodile's eyes. So that is one of the vulnerable point of a crocodile, the eye and the underarm, all right? The rest of the part of the body is very, very hard, okay? So the only point that you can attack a crocodile is on the eye and on the underarm, all right? So what happens? The crocodile is injured, okay? The crocodile is injured. In page number 101, as we find here, with all the force of her little body, she drove the hay fork at the eyes, and one prong went in right in while its bare scratch passed on the horny cheek. So the crocodile was so much in pain, in convulsion, and as it is given out here, he reared up in convulsion, all right? It was such a violent kind of contraction of his muscles till half his lizard body was out of the river, the tail and nose nearly meeting over his stony back. Then he crashed back, exploding the water, and in an uproar of bloody foam he disappeared. All right. Now, it does not mean that it was Sibia could easily go and he she could easily go and aim at the, of course her she was aiming at the eye, but even this crocodile noticed that Sibia was approaching, so he tried to, you know, push her away, lash her away with his tail, but even that did not stop her. She she was so focused, and that is when she aims at his eye, and that is when he bleeds to death. All right. Now, evidently does not mean that crocodile would die. It would take some days for him to die. All right. As it is given in here, not presently. He would not die presently, but it would be known after a few days, until his stomach blows up with gas and floats him on the river. Then perhaps he may be found upside down among the logs, the timber boom with pus in his eyes. So that is when people would know that, oh, the crocodile had died. Okay. Now in this story, in this screen, after she attacks the crocodile and the crocodile retrieves back, she is seen to drag the woman out of the water in page number 101. She helps her, and what she does is she stops the wound by applying some sand and ties them up with the rag cloth. Okay, and then she helps this Gujar woman to her encampment, and that is when the people the Gujar people arrives and takes the man arrives and takes her with a litter, a small device that is used for carrying a sick injured person, and then carries her for treatment. All right. Now Sibia returns back to fetch her hay for her paper grasses and whatnot. Now when she approaches, all right, in page number 101, it is given here, then Sibia went back for her grass and sickle and fork. The fork was lying in the river. It was luckily not carried away by the flow of the river. And as she bent to pick it up out of the water, she saw the blue bead. All right. But now it was not blue because the sun has set. It was already evening with the sun nearly gone, but a no color white blue. It was something like no color, but it was like little bit of white blue, and its shape wobbling. Wobbling means moving with an unsteady side to side motion. And its shape wobbling in the movement of the stream. She reached her arm down into a yard of the cold silk water to get it, missing it first of all because of the refraction, because of the deflection of light. And there, when she finally got hold of it, it was on her wet palm. It was so perfect, pierced, ready for use. As you see in the picture, round in shape, and there's a small hole in the middle. It was already ready for use. With the sunset shuffled about inside it like gold, as all her heart went up in flames of joy. She was so joyful in finding this blue bead at the end of the story. It was something like that her hard work paid off. All right. As you see here in the picture, she was quite delighted on seeing the blue bead. And here, as she returned home, it was already dark. And this time, it was, it could be very dangerous because it was a time when people don't uh, uh, go in the forest or return. They usually return before the sunset. All right, and she was returning when it was already dark. And here in page number 102, you'd find there were there were mosquitoes, and there were tracks which were usually used by some Magna elephant that has been mentioned here, unhappy elephant, the tuskless one. But Sibia, in spite of all this, was not thinking about any kind of danger. All right, the stars had already come out. Perhaps it was already night. All right, she noticed, of course, and on her way back, she meets her mother, who was out of breath, because she must have been tense when she had reached home. She noticed Sibia was not there all along. All right, so she was out of breath searching for Sibia. If something had gone wrong with her, something had happened to her, some sort of danger if it had caused her, and she scolds her, saying, "I did not see till I was home that you were not there. I thought something must have happened to you." And here Sibia burst out with her story and cries, "Something did." She exclaims with so much of delight, "Something did." And that was, she found a blue bead for her necklace. So this is where you find that a girl, a 12-year-old girl, who does not care about anything else in the story but only the blue bead. Why? Because she had wished for a very long time. And so the bravery that she had shown today does not matter to her than finding a blue bead in the story. And that makes it more remarkable. That makes it more interesting. An innocent girl who innocently wants something, and she gets it. And it is almost like she had dreamt about it and she gets it so simply. All right, although she had to struggle, she skipped, she leaves behind her mother. She goes to the cavelets, sees the clay pots that she had molded to be dry. When she returns, on her way, she noticed the Gujar woman being attacked, and she in fact goes and attacks a crocodile. All this thing does not matter to her when she finds the blue bead, because that was a delight that she was wishing for a very long time, to have a necklace of a blue bead. So that's where the title is justified, and the theme of wish fulfillment proves to be uh, evident, proves to be uh, her aspiration. That's what she wanted throughout her life, okay, in spite of the poverty, in spite of her bravery that she shows. All right, so I hope you have enjoyed the video, but please, I would request you to kindly read the story, because I have not gone too much in details, just have picked up some important points with the sequence of the story, and believe that you would be safe at home. So please stay safe, be at home, and read the story. Thank you for watching.